Welcome to the Thundercast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week. So keep it right here. The Thundercast is on the loose. Phil Steele ranks Marshall's offensive line tied for fifth in the Sun Belt entering 2026, but the herd returns two preseason Phil Steele all SBC selections and a unit that helped pave the way for one of the nation's better rush attacks last year. Marshall also added nine new offensive linemen to the room for 2026. So tonight, we're breaking down the herd's offensive line. Thanks for downloading another episode of the Thundercast. You can follow us on Twitter at Thundercast_pod. Listen to the show anywhere you love to listen to your favorite podcast. And of course, if you're watching, you've already found the Thundercast YouTube channel. While you're there, we sure would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit the post notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Thundercast. If you have the ability to give the hype points because those are pretty cool too. Russ, before we start running down, let me get just an initial thought. I want to do that. An initial thought on how you feel about the offensive line heading into 2026 based on what we saw in 2025 and what we think we know this year.
Super excited, super bullish on this room as a whole. I'm not the only one. When we talked to Coach Gibson, he was pretty high on the offensive line when we had him on several weeks ago. But getting Jalen Slappy back, a guy that could have gone anywhere last year, and it would have been don't take it the wrong way, it would have made sense, with everybody else leaving. It would have been easy for him to do that. And he came back. Mm-hmm. And then he gets even more accolades. So more money could be gotten by that guy. And he chose to stay again. And I am really thinking that because of that, my thoughts on this offensive line just went through the roof compared to what it could have been.
Sure. Heck yeah. That was one of this year's announcements that I'm coming back that I think sent all of the herd fan base into a collective sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Because that guy now enters campus legend territory, playing his entire career for the herd, going to finish his career with the herd as a graduate or as a redshirt senior. Just going to be a massive part of what this offense is able to do because he was a massive part of what it was able to do last year. So that's not out of the realm, dude. You're right on the money. That was a huge announcement, and I think that's the biggest announcement for this room. Obviously, the herd lost some talent, gained some talent, made some moves in the portal and the high school ranks through recruiting, and we're going to talk about all of it. This unit is coached by Bob McLean entering year 2, part of Tony Gibson's inaugural staff.
Yep.
Let's talk about some 2025 production numbers for the offense real quick, just to give some context of what the O-line was a big part of. 197 rush yards per game, number 22 rushing offense in the country, 2,364 total rush yards last year, which we expect to go up this year. Nearly 5 yards per carry for the herd runners, nearly 405 yards per game of total offense. And here's the great one, I think, just 19 total sacks allowed across the season, which was 33rd fewest in sacks allowed for the season. They did it run blocking, they did it pass blocking, and the biggest piece, returns. There will be changes, we know that, but the biggest piece, returns. Russ, would you like to run through some departures, or would you like me to run through the departures?
I'll do the departures.
Okay.
Yeah. This is going to be in numerical order that I run through these, and I'll tell you how they departed or why. Number 50, Henry Harden from last year, 6'3", 275. He left via the portal and is still unsigned as of today. I checked. Eric Meeks, 6'3", 312. He was starting center last year, just ran out of eligibility. He famously came back last year as well. He had entered the portal, took his name back out of it, came with Slappy, and helped anchor that squad last year. Sean Marcus Adams, 6'3", 354. Again, eligibility. He's in some camps and trying to make it in the NFL, that sort of thing. Also a big piece of the puzzle last year, along with figuratively and literally 350 pounder. Then you got Bryce Biggs. He actually started the last couple of games last year after some injuries and moving some people around. 6'4", 303, and he exhausted his eligibility. Again, he was the local kid, Ashland area, went to Spring Valley, went up to WVU, transferred back down. Peyton Ellis medically retired, and he made that really good post about mental health and everything. And I just want to, again, praise him for doing that, because that could have helped hundreds and up to thousands of people on social media, having the guts to make that post. And we wish him the absolute best, but he medically retired. Morgan Scott, 6'5", 296, ran out of eligibility. Tyler McDuffie, the 6'9", 358-pound tackle that had a lot of starts until kind of lost his starting spot there the later quarter of the season, but then got it back. Could have had a little nagging injury. He exhausted his eligibility. The only one that really transferred out, he had some starts, had a lot of fill in the gap places. Christian Richter, 6'6", 300. He went to UConn. So he is really the only one that departed the team that had much contributions that was not due to having no more eligibility or medically retiring.
Yeah, kind of a little surprising, when you think you're anchoring, or you're an offensive line that has a big part of a top 25 rush offense. You would think in this day and age you might see more guys portal out and have more suitors, but I think that speaks to what the culture is now under Tony Gibson, Bob McLean, and this offense, this Rod Smith offense. The guys want to be here. They want to play here, and they want to see what this can become in year two. So to lose Richter was a little surprising to me. I don't know why that was surprising, or seeing him portal out. I thought he'll be back. He was a pretty good contributor and will probably have an increased role this year. But for him to only be the only one that hit the portal and found a destination, everybody else either exhausting eligibility or in Peyton Ellis's case, medically retiring. I think that says a lot about what the guys want to be a part of here.
It does. It says a lot about like you already said, the coaching staff and the culture that they have put in. When you look at overall how many players came back, and from every room, not just offensive line, this is just a microcosm of this offensive line room that we're talking about, of the returners that either me, you, whomever are getting ready to talk about. It's all about the culture and the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think I really believe that this year, and of course in the offseason, this was a big point of emphasis for the recruiting portion of the offseason through the portal and through high school recruiting. When we did our roster refresh a couple of weeks ago, we had noted that they had signed 8 or added 8. And that number is actually 9. We had wondered if there would be any additions later, and there should be. I won't say there will be, but there should be. We are expecting one more to be added that was signed any day.
Yeah, to my knowledge, it was June the 1st, because that's what he had originally said. He was a May graduate, and we'll get into that. But that's why he's not on the roster as of right now. It hadn't been updated since after the spring game, and he had not graduated from his college yet.
Right. So he could very well be on campus, already added, just not a roster update, which we indicated during the episode could be a thing at a number of positions.
Yeah.
But based on what came back and then how heavy they hit it in the off season, tells you It was a big point of emphasis, a huge point of emphasis. And before we start talking about those newcomers, I want to take a second and break away from football and talk about our presenting sponsor for the Position Group Breakdown Series for 2026, and that's Secure Construction Company. If you're in need of roof repair, roof replacement, and kind of all things roofing, please give them a call at 304-733 1760 or go to secureconstruction.com for your fair and honest quote. We've got a little something we'll play for you so you can give a little broader detail of what they can do for you. But we can't go through these episodes without saying a big thank you to Secure Construction Company for being the presenting sponsor for the Position Group Breakdown Series in 2026.
Your roof takes a beating from this tri-state weather. High winds, never-ending downpours, and more lead to leaks, loose or missing shingles, and other storm damage. Don't wait until it gets worse. Get Secure. Secure Construction has been handling commercial and residential roofs in the tri-state for more than 25 years. They have been family-owned since 2000, are fully licensed and insured, have a 10-year workmanship warranty, and have been voted best in the tri-state 14 years running. So if your asphalt, rubber, or metal roof needs replaced, repaired, or just needs an honest inspection, call Secure Construction today at 304-733-1760 or find them on the web at secureconstruction.com. Be sure and mention the Thundercast when calling for your free, honest estimate. Home improvements in secure hands.
AD, I always said it the last 2 weeks, but Herd fans love doing business with Herd fans. And Eddie Keller of Secure Construction, family owned since 2000, massive Herd fan. You know, you'll see him at the games, you'll see him around town. And if you are like everyone else in the area and high winds come through, or age starts coming up on your 100-year-old house on the south side and you need a new roof or you just need it inspected, hey, not every company does just come out and do a little repair. They might want to replace the whole daggone thing because that's all they do. Secure does it all. So you can get it repaired, you can get it fully replaced, but you can, more than anything, get an honest, free inspection.
Yeah, I mean, a roof is one of those things you can't not fix. Right? You have to do it. And if you have to do it, there is absolutely no reason not to call Secure Construction and get your fair, free, honest quote and try to do a little business with some Herd fans, right? Mm-hmm. So let's get back to football. Let's talk about these newcomers that come to the Herd in 2026. I'm going to run down the transfer list first, and then we'll talk about those freshmen.
Hey, real quick, we didn't do returners. Do we need to talk about them?
Well, I think – I don't have them all, but I think like we're going to talk about most of them, but you can if you want.
I'll run down them real quick and just a couple of notes on a couple of them with body transformation since last year. Jalen Slappy, we all know, 6'4", 335 this year, listed as 323 last year. So Dwight Galt has got him bulked up a little bit more. Tariq Montgomery, also a starter, 6'5", 320. He was 326 last year. And then the rest of these in numerical order: Drake Lanham, 6'3", 280. Andrew Dudley, 6'3", 289. Evan Ferguson, 6'3", 306. Marwan Diab, 6'3", 282. Here's a little tricky one. Last year, he was listed as 6'6", 280. So unless he had the haircut that, you know, added a couple of inches to him, I think one of these heights was wrong, either last year or this year. But anyway, Parker Brault, 6'3", 290. Eli Kaufman, 6'4", 293. He's up 10 pounds over his true freshman year. Jack Laird, 6'6", 299. And Isaac Clary, 6'7", 346. Those are your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 returners from this squad from last year.
Yeah, so it's just a little mix up in our notes, or a different format in our notes. I just have most of these guys already listed in the depth portion of my notes. But look at that. That's not just 10 guys, right? That's 10 guys that played football for Marshall. It's not all guys that were on the roster and didn't see any action. Many of these guys saw a lot of in-game action for the Herd last year. And of course, that's going to pay big dividends this year because, well, you're going to be replacing at a minimum 60% of your starting offensive line, right? We know that. So let's talk about some of the guys that might be doing that, might be plugging some of those holes. We'll talk newcomers now, 9 of them total. Transfer portal, there were 5. Logan Greer, we talked about before, comes to us from California, University of Pennsylvania, where Bob McLean was before coming to the Herd. He is a center. 6'2", 279. Robbie Martin comes to us from WVU via NC State via Huntington High School. 6'4", 296-pound redshirt sophomore. Xavier Bowsley is a redshirt senior, 6'4", 312. Also comes to us from WVU. Jaquez Joyner, 6'1", 288 from UCF. And Holden Grieger is the JUCO guy that we were speculating just a few minutes ago. Is he or isn't he here yet? I think that he is because of what Coach Gibson said. It's just that the roster probably has not been updated to reflect that. Anyway, the important part, 6'7", 340, that'll play. As Russ likes to say, that'll play. There's a quartet of freshmen that come to us from the high school ranks. Javon White, 6'6", 300. Mason Ramsey, another Huntington High School grad, 6'3", 285. William Sandfoss, 6'5", 280. And Justin Lyle, 6'3", 240 pounds, are your 9 newcomers to the Herd in 2026. Quick reaction about those guys.
So Robbie Martin and Xavier Bowsley are extremely familiar to this coaching staff. Robbie Martin is a Huntington area guy and went to Huntington High School, went to NC State, probably largely because of recruiting efforts from Coach Gibson. You know, he is consistently been on the hill at Huntington High. He's been at Cabell Midland. He's been at Spring Valley. He's been all around here, the Charleston area. The guy never stopped recruiting this area because he believed in these local athletes. And we think that it's great to get not only local, but in-state guys. But Xavier Bowsley, not only was he a West Virginia guy, a local guy, he went to WVU, yes, but before that, he was at Jacksonville State.
Yep.
And he was very familiar to the offensive coaches down there, and he started 11 games for him down there on one of those really dynamic years, production years, before he went to WVU. So those two alone are extremely important and intriguing. Local guys, but also well known to the coaching staff. Feels like they went out and got 2 guys that they knew immediately could do exactly what they wanted. And then Holden Grieger at 6'7", 340, and some of the stuff that I want to talk about him a little bit later. I am extremely high on him as well. The 4 guys that we brought in includes Huntington High School guy, Mason Ramsey, but we got 4 really good, not only some different sizes in there, 6'5", 280 William Sandfoss, but we got some guys that had a lot of really high accolades and ratings coming out of high school. This looks like we are loaded at the offensive line position from these last 2 years of a bunch of very high ceiling guys.
I think there's a nice mix here. You got guys that can contribute immediately. You've got guys that you are afforded the opportunity to give them a year to develop a little bit. And I think you have some guys here, and we're just talking newcomers, that can also be contributors if needed. They're game ready in a depth role, right? I think you have starters here. I think you have depth pieces here, and you have developmental pieces here. So they've done a phenomenal job. One other note about Bowsley, not only was he at Jack State with Rod Smith in that offense, he started those games as a freshman.
Right.
And he was named a second-team All-American, freshman All-American by The Athletic. So it wasn't like Bob's.com. This is The Athletic. This is a legitimate news source that has a lot of respect in a lot of circles around the sports world. So a freshman All-American second teamer WVU via Jacksonville State, Rod Smith offense experience, Robbie Martin, intimate knowledge of the coaches have an intimate knowledge of him. You return Jalen Slappy, you return Tariq Montgomery. I mean, it starts to really look pretty good. So let's start talking about some projected starters. I don't really care much for position. Really, the only one that matters to me right now is who you plugging in to be the starting center, since Eric Meeks has exhausted eligibility, and you have to find a solution for center. So I don't care where you start, who you want to start with. Let's talk projected starters.
I actually broke mine down by position along the line, and I did it based on where they played and started last year and things like that. So I'm just going to go center first, since you mentioned that. And I've actually got Andrew Dudley, the kid that is now a redshirt freshman, was a true freshman last year, highly ranked out of IMG Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Gibson mentioned him specifically as someone that would probably get a lot of playing time this year. And I'm putting Andrew Dudley in there at center.
I think that's a good piece. The only thing that scares me about that, it doesn't scare me because Tony Gibson has already talked so highly of him, is that he doesn't have a D1 playing, or not even D1, but college playing experience. Now, IMG Academy is like an animal unlike any other. If you know, right? They are an athlete factory. They're like 90 minutes down the road from me in Bradenton, Florida. I mean, if you can play and start on IMG's teams, you can freaking play. There's no two ways about it. Okay. But what intrigues me most about that is that they go out and they get Logan Greer, who played center for Bob McLean already. So there's a familiarity level there. So initially, I'm okay with being wrong because obviously I want the best guy that contributes to wins. But I'm leaning towards experience with the coach since we don't really know. And I'm plugging in Logan Greer, a 6'2", 279, redshirt junior, by the way, to be the starting center. What do you got next?
I'm going to go over to left tackle, and I think that Tariq Montgomery, who had a lot of playing time at left tackle, I think that is where he will be this year, and he's nailed down that starting spot.
That's the same for me. If we're matching, I'm just going to go the same one. Left tackle for me, I have Tariq Montgomery as well, 6'5", 320. Redshirt senior, lot of experience, started games for Marshall. It makes sense.
And then instead of going left to right, I'm going to go on the outside on the other side of that. I'm going right tackle, and I'm going Xavier Bowsley. He played tackle. And, if you got Montgomery started more games at left tackle and Bowsley actually started on the right side, he started right tackle at Jack State, I'm sliding him in right there.
Yeah. Another match, unsurprisingly, after reading the bio, reading the experience, the size fits, it tracks. Xavier Bowsley, right tackle for me as well, 6'4", 312, another redshirt senior.
Left guard, I've got Robbie Martin, the second of those in-state guys that are newcomers, and I've got him at left guard, and I think it's pretty clear why he's not at right guard when I talk about right guard here in a minute.
Yeah, but with that with that selection, I can say that outside of center, we have clean sweep the offensive line. I too, left guard Robbie Martin, 6'4", 296, redshirt sophomore, the youngster of the group, but also one of the more talked about, highly touted prospects coming out. So also not surprising. And last but not least,
I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that we are going to have Jalen Slappy as our projected starter. I can't imagine anybody in the country except maybe Throne Spud that would have him riding the bench, or maybe as a kick returner or something stupid. But Jalen Slappy, the preseason Sun Belt Conference selection from Phil Steele, I've got him penciled back in yet again at right guard.
Yep, right guard Jalen Slappy, 6'4", 335, another redshirt senior, campus legend territory. This was the biggest rubber stamp moment of the offensive line position group breakdown. This was just not going to happen, So looking across my starting five, I have 3 redshirt seniors, a redshirt junior, and a redshirt sophomore. That means at least 3 years of experience for every single member of my starting 5, and many of them have 4+ years of college football under their belt. Now, my starting 5 averages across the line 6', 3.9 inches, nearly 6'4", and 308+ pounds. That's a line that I think can play. That's not just big bodies. That is guys that we know need to be mobile and agile for what they want to do in this offense. I love these 5 guys in particular. And if the center happens to be Dudley, then you're just adding a bigger body in there.
It's 1 inch and 10 pounds more looking at them side by side here on the roster as of the last updated roster that we had for them. But yeah, I'm right there with you. Dudley may just end up being a contributor. He definitely played interior offensive line at IMG. I just feel like he may have a little bit up on Logan Greer, who I still expect to be an important depth piece.
Absolutely. Now, everybody, you're listening here. You don't want to just we want you to be an active part of the episode. So drop down in the comments. Tell us, who do you like as your starting 5 moving forward to start game 1 in 2026? Because how many of our followers say it all the time? You can't ever have enough offensive linemen.
Yeah.
One football 101. Put next bullet point, football 101. Control the line of scrimmage, you control the game, all those things. So who are your starting 5 offensive linemen for the Herd in game 1 against Penn State? Russ, let's talk about some of these guys that are going to be depth pieces because, we feel really good about our 5, but we know it's really, really hard to stay healthy for an entire season. Yeah. Many of these guys are going to be leaned on to provide quality snaps, maybe in crunch time moments. Yeah. So I think I tried to list these guys in such a way to where I thought it might be a first off the bench type thing. But of course I know that depends on who you got to go fill the hole with, right? So it doesn't hold true all the way down, but I feel like, okay, who's going to be the first one off the bench for me if I need to sub? So let's do that. I don't know how you wrote them down, but give me your first big depth piece, you think.
I don't really have them listed that way. So I just can't. I can't list them that way because, somebody goes down, it depends on what position they're
in.
Yeah. And I just feel like any of these guys could be a starter at some point during the year due to somebody needing a break, somebody needing just, hey, let's check and see if something else would work better, just a little bit different dynamic. Somebody's nagging injury. Somebody decides that, well, we're going to reduce this person's snaps, so let's not have them start. Let's have them come into second series, whatever. So I've got 6 guys here listed. So you go ahead and list your first person off the bench. Mine are going to be random.
Well, mine are too. This is not this is the 6th best offensive lineman and the 7th. That's not what I'm going for.
Okay.
Right? But I'm taking into account a lot of things. Like, what's your class status? Did you transfer in and you got 1 year to play? Well, you probably came here for a reason, and that was to play. But anyway, my first guy, my first big depth piece is Holden Grieger, 6'7", 340. You don't come here with that type of frame and that type of body and not expect to play at some point, at many points this year. So
all media that you hear about this guy is that he's not only got that size, but he is athletic and has tremendous footwork at that size. And they feel that is a tremendous upside for him. He did mention in his interview when he signed with Marshall, that's where he said he would be on campus June 1st. And that's why you and I are both pretty confident he's already here and already doing the things. But he mentioned that they saw him as a tackle. I think everyone sees him as a tackle at 6'7", 340, but he specifically mentioned Bob McLean and how Bob was the reason he was coming here. And all of the coaching staff after that, and he liked how down to earth they were and honest they were and everything. But he specifically said, they see me as a tackle. So I'm thinking that he will spell Montgomery and Bowsley quite a bit, and you'll see him on the outside with that 6'7", and even bigger wingspan that he has.
Yeah. Do you want to name one, or do you want me to just keep going?
I had him too, so I'm just naming him as well.
I mean, it makes sense also that a guy that played quite a bit last year that returns this year is also going to be a big depth piece. That's Isaac Clary, another 6'7", 346 pounder. So you almost identical body to Holden Grieger, two big guys that you have to provide really much needed depth in all throughout the season, and maybe start some games like you're saying.
Well, I mentioned him last year. He's also on my list. I mentioned him last year with his basketball ability in high school, shows how athletic he was. I can't remember if he also wrestled. It seemed like maybe he wrestled as well, but up in the Point Pleasant area, not too far up the road. But huge body, huge athleticism. I think you'll see him spelling Bowsley and Montgomery as well out at the tackle.
Next on the list for me is I threw in the guys that might end up playing center. You know, that, like I said, this is in no real order, but I mentioned Andrew Dudley, or you mentioned Andrew Dudley. This is where he falls for me too, as maybe that second center or the starting center, 6'3", 289. But I want to throw in on that also. This is where Evan Ferguson falls for me, because you could see him as a depth piece center there as well. So I want to talk about both of those guys at the same time, because we're talking about the same position potentially. And Evan, of course, is the son of legacy player, all-time great Marshall offensive lineman Aaron Ferguson, great friend of the Thundercast. Evan, 6'3", 306. So still two very big bodies that, I don't know about Dudley's lineage, but we know the Ferguson bloodline runs deep with Marshall offensive line. So those are the next two off my list.
All right, so I'll do two as well, and I'll flip-flop, because you had Greer as a starter. I've got him as a heavy contributor, and I do have him there at center, and it's for exactly what you mentioned. Bob McLean went out and said, I want this guy. So he is at the very minimum depth because he's familiar with him. And you have to imagine it's at center where he provides that depth or starting ability, either or. And then I'll mention Ferguson because I have him here as well. I also have him at center, but also able to slide over at guard and contribute there. And everything that you echoed about Aaron, I will just say or everything you said, I will echo. And I thought it was tremendous when we picked this kid up last year, and then he comes in and contributes all that he did, coming from Gardner Webb. The layman may look at that and say, that kid was only at Gardner Webb, no chance. Well, he contributed quite a bit last year. And I look for him to take a significant leap forward this year and build off that. The familiarity that he has with the system, this program, this town, everything about it. I look for him to contribute quite a bit at center and guard.
Yep. Next guy I'm going to talk about that I feel like could be a big contributor is Eli Kaufman, 6'4", 293 pounder, up 10 pounds from last year. It just feels like a time to step up for the youngster, a time to step into a larger role with some upperclassmen that need to make it through the length of an entire season. You're going to be needing to play some meaningful snaps at times. And Kaufman is a guy that I feel like could step into that role this year.
Yeah, I also have Eli Kaufman, and it's a good time to go ahead and remind everybody that Coach Gibson mentioned Kaufman by name, Ferguson by name, Dudley by name, and then another by name here in a minute, but specifically these people that were here last year for their first year that are coming in that he felt like they would be big time contributors this year. I also have Eli Kaufman there. I have him as a guard. Don't know if he would slide in at center any at all, but definitely interior offensive line. And you'll probably see him on the field quite a bit this year.
Last one I'm going to personally feature is Jack Laird, 6'6", 295 or 299 pounder. It's another one of those, you just like the body, you like the build, you like the frame. It feels like this is a contributing season, the first time that you might see meaningful playing time, not just late in game or I need somebody in there real quick. So because we got somebody limping off the field type of thing. But this is now a designed piece for you to be a part of the game plan. It's 66299. You got to love that. So now, and nobody I didn't mention that that does not mean that I don't think they will play, but we're not going to talk about 20 offensive linemen, right? So we have to draw the line somewhere. I draw the line after Jack Laird.
Well, the category says heavy contributors,
Yeah.
and it's not heavy contributors because these guys are over 320 pounds. They're going to be playing a lot of snaps, and I too have Jack Laird as my final person, and that is the other name that Coach Gibson had mentioned. He specifically mentioned those guys, and if the coach is mentioning that he thinks that they'll play a lot of snaps, it stands to reason that we would think they're going to play a lot of snaps. Yeah. So I have, out of those 11, you and I had pretty much the same thing. Just the starter might be flip-flop between two different guys. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on it this year. Now, I will mention that there are some guys that I do think will see action. There are other guys that will see action.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But in ways that we saw some of these guys we're talking about this year, the Evan Fergusons, the Clarys, the Griegers, the Lairds, that's where these guys will fall. The Parker Braults will fall into that. Drake Landon might fall into that. You'll get the first taste of your action, this year. So it's by no means saying you can't play. If you couldn't play, you wouldn't be on this roster. Obviously, you can play. But
I think Joyner transferring over from UCF, he's probably gonna play. It's just don't see him in the mix the same as those guys that we just mentioned on the same level of snaps.
Right. So let's talk about some overall strengths and weaknesses for this group, the way that we see it. Russ, what's your number one overall strength for the Herd?
Number 1 out of 4 for strengths for me. I've got experience and familiarity. They returned Slappy and Montgomery, 40% of your offensive starts last year. Bring in Bowsley and Martin, who have years under the belt in the college game, but also extremely familiar with these coaches, like I mentioned. 8 others were with this team last year. So 2 that started last year and then 8 that were in the program. That's 10. And then you're bringing in these other 2 that have great familiarity and extremely high upside. That experience and familiarity for me is a huge strength.
Yeah, that's my number 2 overall strength is experience as well. And it's kind of wild that you have 10 guys that were in the program last year. 2 of them started a lot of games for you last year. Mm-hmm. And then specifically when you talk about Bowsley and his familiarity with Rod Smith, it's almost like you're taking off one jersey and putting on the green jersey. That's really what it is. So there's no kind of learning curve to it, not with him, specifically not with him. And I think the other 2 guys that are going to round out that starting 5, whoever it is, at least if it's my 5, all 5 of them will have a lot of in-game college playing time, So, and if Dudley happens to be the starting center, then he's got some experience, some playing experience, but not as much as Greer. But I still like overall experience as the number 2 strength for me. The only real question to me is how many, if any, really, of these incoming freshmen will see any action. Outside of that, you feel pretty good about what you got here. You go pretty daggone deep before you start digging into guys that haven't seen any action whatsoever. That's a pretty good strength. What do you got for number 2?
Number 2 for me is Jalen Slappy. I know that he could have slid right in there as part of that number 1, which he was, but he's on a short list for all sorts of lists after last season and before this season, and he's the leader of the room. Him coming back, specifically him coming back, was the catalyst for me thinking so highly of this room. When you think that you would have to replace him as well as Meeks and Sean Marcus Adams and all the different people that left. McDuffie had a lot of starts and all that. I would have been a lot more questioning of this room. You have to list that as a strength, whether you specifically have that written down or not. It just has to be in everybody's mind that Jalen Slappy makes this offensive line better.
Absolutely. And that happens to be my number 3 overall strength. Of course, I just put it under the heading of veteran leadership, right? And that's different than experience, man.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership, veteran leadership. And you return 2 preseason All-SBC selections. Jalen Slappy's first team by Phil Steele, Montgomery's third team. But that's 2 pieces that are extremely capable, not just players, but leaders, tone setters, culture pieces in this room. Right. And they are setting the expectation. But above all, it's Jalen Slappy setting the main tone for the room. He's the guy that's been here, played the most, stayed when he could have left. And now there's a little bit of, I don't really want to call it pressure, but there's an expectation definitely to go out there and perform at an extremely high level. Not him personally, yes, but this room as a whole, because of the way that it has come together, who returned, who they brought in, how it all got augmented and put together. There is a certain amount of pressure and expectation, I think, that these guys are putting on themselves. Coaches are putting on them to go show me, right? And the fans want to see it. We got a taste of it last year, of the electricity behind this run game, this dynamic quarterback that we'll talk about in a few weeks, and it was just fun to watch, and now we all want to see it notch up. So veteran leadership for me was my number 3 overall strength. What's your next one?
My number 3 is size, but athletically. Grieger and Clary, both massive in that 6'7", 340s range, but they are both very mobile, good footwork. Slappy has added some size. He's up 12 pounds from last year, but, again, he is an athletic person. And I don't mean this in a bad way. Tyler McDuffie was 2 inches taller than those 2 guys that I just mentioned and had maybe 13 to 20 pounds on those guys. But these 2 seem more mobile than Tyler McDuffie was. So size for size sake is not what I'm saying. Size with the athleticism. Xavier Bowsley at his size and weight is a very athletic guy at tackle.
Yeah.
Jalen Slappy at 335 is a very athletic guard. And then 6'7", 340 guys out there, we've talked about their footwork and their other sports that they played and all that. It is size, but athleticism to go with it, not just size for size's sake.
Yeah, and that's important. You got to be able to move. Otherwise, you're just a big guy that's trying to get in the way. Mm-hmm. And if you can't get in the way, then you're pretty ineffective, So especially in an offense like this, we know that you're going to have to be able to be fluid and move and pull and all these type of things. You have to be able to do that effectively. I only have 3 strengths, so I'm going to give you my number 1 overall strength. I'll let you finish out with your number 4. My number 1 overall strength is that we had proven run production and pass protection last year. That's where the expectation creeps in again. These guys proved that they could do it. Specifically, Montgomery and Slappy proved that it could be done on the field at Joan C. Edwards Stadium. And then you bring in a guy like Bowsley that's familiar with the Rod Smith offense that you think is only going to be a positive. You bring in a guy like Robbie Martin that we both think is going to be a day 1 starter because he is uber talented. And at that point, you're really only asking the question about who's the best and who will rise out to be your starting center. But when you return the 2 biggest pieces from the number 22 rush offensive line, the 2 biggest pieces that only allowed were part of an offensive line that only allowed 19 sacks last season, you have proven production. And I think they went out and got better this year. I think the line will be better this year than it was last year. So couple all that on top of having numbers from last year that you can go, we did that last year, we got to do better than that this year. That's my number 1 strength. We're not guessing if we can do it. This line has proved many of the guys that returned, contributed last year, were part of that as well. It's not just Montgomery and Slappy. It's those guys and all the other guys we talked about that played games. They've already done it. That's the hugest strength to me. That's the number one strength. It's not will we see it, it's we've seen it. Now we want to see more of it. What's your fourth?
It's depth. And I think that you can go to the two deep at every single position along here, and it looks very, very solid. It looks like the heavy contributors, we didn't have a lot of questions of, well, we've got three heavy contributors. We don't know who these others are. We both listed six. So that is every position. You can at least slide another person in. And I feel like that depth is really looking good because 10 of these players were on the roster last year.
I mean, that's a good problem to have. I mean, depth is not a problem on the offensive line this year. I think the bigger problem is satisfying everybody with enough snaps, and that's where I want to be, honestly.
Yeah.
Let's flip it over. Let's talk weaknesses because this was not the number one rated offensive line unit in the Sun Belt, right? So questions are out there from experts. Let's say experts. I will call Phil Steele an expert. He is. He has questions, so there must be weaknesses. What's your number one overall weakness for the Herd O-line room this year?
Number one of three weaknesses I listed is replacing 60% of the regular starters from last year. You know, anytime that you have to do that, I don't care if you had contributors last year, they weren't starters last year. I feel a lot better when you're only replacing one than you had to replace three. So that to me is a weakness.
It is to me too. It's my number two overall weakness. Yet again, it's integrating those new pieces. Even though we're high on them and we think they will be productive, you still have to do it. You still have to put them in there, and it still has to work. 19 total offensive linemen on this roster. Currently, 9 of them are new, and at least 3 of your 5 starters will be newcomers to the program in 2026. Building cohesion and depth. Like, depth on paper is one thing. Depth from 2025 is another thing. Now, building it in 2026 and throughout camp is another animal. I think it will happen, but until it does happen, it's still a weakness until it's proven otherwise. What's your number two weakness?
Well, even though experience was listed as a strength up there a little bit ago, 1 or 2 injuries turned this into a weakness real fast. And it's what you just said about having to replace so many and them not having that experience. Even though they were on the team, even though they weren't starters, or they didn't play the majority of the snaps of the year. So this is a room that skews younger, and lots of them have limited to no starts. So again, that is kind of what you just said, just phrased in a different way.
My number one overall weakness is replacing Eric Meeks, but more specifically, the starting center, because that's the guy that touches the football every single play, no matter what. And if you can't find the right solution at that position, it really becomes a long season really quickly. Eric played a fine center last year, and Marshall has an extremely good history of high-level center play for as long as I can remember. I mean, as long as I can remember. You can go back 30 years and even farther and start talking about some of those guys. You know, we can rip off a few right now. I mean, John Wade, good Lord. Jason Starkey, come on. Levi Brown, Chris Jaspers, like all these guys, great centers, right? So you have to find a solution for that. We did it last year. You know, we were looking for a solution last year. Eric Meeks became that solution, and he was a good center, but you got to do it again. A new center means replacing that leadership on the line, that communication, the experience in the middle of the O-line, all of that. And if we are unable to do that, it'll not only be a weakness, it'll be a glaring weakness. So that's my number one. What you got next?
My number 3 and final is in that hypothetical scenario that we have quarterback Khalil Wilkins in for significant plays. Say certain packages that they designed to run, injury to other quarterbacks, or he plays his way into the role. Whatever, he's playing a significant a number of snaps. All of a sudden, you've got a lefty, and protecting the blind side is exactly flip-flopped. Now, these guys are professional. They've done this a long time. I feel like they'll be able to figure it out. I just feel like any time that you have a righty and lefty situation where it's going back and forth, that you may have a little bit of hiccup that could happen, that, blocking schemes are a little bit different, for a lefty, but also a quarterback that comes in that might be a lot more hyper mobile, things are just a little bit different. So I feel like if there is a continuity switch between the quarterbacks, not reading anything into that, I'm just saying if there's an injury or anything happens, that could be a weakness, because one guy that could replace him is going to be throwing the exact opposite hand. I've mentioned that before. Anybody with knowledge can say, Russ, you're an idiot. And you may know a lot more about it than me. That's just, I bring that up every time because, blocking for that blind side is different.
Well, that is a good point, and I mean, nobody's going to come at you for saying that, because I've heard on NFL broadcasts, guys talking about how that affects a receiver. And
comes out of their hand different.
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern, because when you get down to the nth degree, that's a data point. That's something that could go wrong. That's something that's different. And in a world where you're trying to find familiarity as much as you can, and not routine, but you know what I mean. You don't want so much new change in the way you do things. That's a legit concern. My number 3 plays off of my number 1 overall strength, and it's actually living up to the expectations, right? This is a veteran group that does have proven production. The challenge, and I think that Phil Steele's ranking kind of backs that up a little bit. The challenge is turning that experience into top tier Sun Belt performance. He's not their number 1, 2, or 3, right? He's their number 5 unit. So somewhere along the way, they've got to find how to solve those problems and turn this line into a top tier Sun Belt unit. That's also their championship type impact for me, like we were talking about with the coaches. You want to move into the questions, the Thundercast, the Thundercast 5, the Thundercast 5 questions. Who is your biggest loss from a year ago out of this room?
Man, it's almost a 1A and a 1B for me. So it's not really a coin flip. I'm going to say he edged them just a little bit. I feel like it'll be reversed for you. But I'm going with Shunmarcus Adams. And I feel like, his size, he had been here and started, and, the continuity that he had, that is it. Eric Meeks, by the slimmest of margins. I feel like his drop off in kick return production from 2024 to 2025 caused him to miss out on this category. Inside joke for us, by the way. If you're a stat head, you know exactly what we're talking about. But I got Shunmarcus Adams with the utmost respect for Eric Meeks to almost have been right there with him.
If it's my number 1 overall weakness is finding a solution for center, then Eric Meeks is my biggest loss from the room from a year ago. And I was going to add on the fact that you also lose some kick return ability with him as well. But yeah, he's the biggest loss for me. Yeah. Who are you most excited to see in 2026?
Amongst several, it's Robbie Martin for me, and a lot of it is how highly recruited he was, but he's right here in Huntington. And just the level of recruiting that he had, he was, I'm thinking, number 1 in the state here at the time when he came out of high school. I am really, really excited to see the hometown boy.
Yeah, I echo that too. I'm most excited to see Robbie Martin in a Marshall uniform, the hometown boy coming back home to play for the Herd. Coming out of high school, man, what was it, like 30-some offers? I mean, it was a who's who that wanted the services of Robbie Martin. He ended up at NC State with Tony Gibson, and As fate would have it, he ends up with Tony Gibson again, but it's right back in Huntington to anchor or help anchor our offensive line. I am most excited to see Robbie Martin. Who is your breakout player for the Herd in 2026 in the offensive line room?
This is the most intriguing one for me because I feel like there are so many candidates to break out because you got 3 new starters. So that gives you multiple chances for breakout, but so many that played last year that will have an increased role this year. It could be a bunch of them. I'm going with Andrew Dudley. I had him penciled in as my starter at center, and that is a large reason why that I chose him ahead of Kaufman, Laird, Ferguson, and then more of the newcomers like Holden Grieger.
This is where I cheat a little bit because I choose Xavier Bowsley as my breakout player for the Herd in 2026. The guy played a lot of football at West Virginia, played a lot of football to the tune of second team freshman All-America honors at Jack State, but none of that was in Huntington. So he's going to be my breakout for the Herd in 2026.
I think that's very fair, and I don't feel that's cheating at all.
Probably the easiest question maybe so far in this series. Who will be the MVP of the unit in 2026?
It's the same as last year. It's Jalen Slappy. He brings back that leadership. Everyone's expecting so much out of him. I feel like he anchors that line. It's Jalen Slappy.
Yep, it's Jalen Slappy for me as well, man. The campus legend, number 70. Back to finish his career in Huntington. He's done it at a high level for a number of years since he was a freshman. He's been playing at a very, very, very high level. He's just gotten better and better and better every single season. I expect nothing short. If he's healthy all year long, I expect nothing short of a first-team All-Sun Belt Conference selection season for him. That's how big of an MVP I think he will be for this Herd offensive line. Incorporated this year, just like we did last year, who is your sleeper pick on the Herd offensive line this year?
It seems like this person was the reason that I came up with the sleeper thing last year, specifically for the offensive line show. And I'm picking the same guy as Isaac Clary. And it's that size that he has, but the sheer athleticism that he had too. First team All-Ohio offensive lineman at Gallia Academy. But he played basketball at a high level. You got to have good footwork to do that sort of thing. 6'7", 347, whatever it was that we had him listed as. The guy's just massive. He got in a lot of playing time and as a reserve in 2024. He played even more last year. I just look for him to kick it up a notch and be that guy that is a sleeper, because he's not one of the starters that I have projected.
My sleeper pick this year is the guy that you are tabbing as the starting center, and that's Andrew Dudley. If Coach likes him, I like him. I think he will at some point play his way into the starting lineup more and more regularly, if that's via injury or just earns the spot outright. He's my sleeper pick for 2026 in the Herd offensive line room. Russ, you got any final comments on the offensive line before we look to close this one down?
No, just the only thing very, very briefly is again, to reiterate, Coach Gibson was very high on this squad in this room. And Slappy coming back helped set the tone. Tariq Montgomery helped set the tone. You've got all these guys that contributed last year. This is a question you ask every now and then. You did not ask it, but you already stated the answer yourself. Do I think this room will be better this year than it was last year? And the answer is the same that you already gave. Yes, I think it will be. And I think that familiarity with the offense, maybe not going into the third game with your third different quarterback, will help. Everything about it just seems to be stacking up that this could be a very good year for the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. I think last year was it was more than serviceable. It was a pretty good offensive line.
Yeah.
In that the offensive statistics were pretty good. And then you take into account the fact that Tony Gibson and this staff did not have a full offseason to put it together. Right. This year they did. That's why I feel like it's going to be better. They were able
Mm-hmm.
to be a little bit more picky. They were able to get some guys that were available that they had relationships with that are going to be just overall boosts to the room. And yeah, I think they're going to be better. I think this is going to fight. I've said this. I think I said this in our coaches show. This was the coin flip position for me. Was it going to be noticeably better once the game started, or would it be kind of the same? On paper, it looks great. That's a far cry from when helmets start smashing, right? But I'm still very, very high on what this could look like from a blocking standpoint, run blocking, pass blocking. I've shifted the way I think about it from I use this term a lot, cautiously optimistic to just flat out optimistic. The more we talk about it, the more I dove in and did the research getting ready for this episode, the more and more I felt better and better about this unit as a whole. So I think this will be one of the top units on this team when it's all said and done. If you got nothing else, dude, I think we should get out of here.
Yeah, so whether you see us at the dot, whether you see us at the vet, or whether you see us coming oh so close to that first tailgate and first game, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the Thundercast. Next week, we'll do somebody on the defense. You're going to have to tune in to find out who. We'll see you next week. Later.